Hello, my name is Rob Sheena, and I'm an oboist and the English horn player in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. You will soon learn that the instruments are related, the oboe and the English horn. I've been playing since I was in middle school, from the age of about 14, in what in those days we called junior high school, I guess, and that was in San Francisco, in the San Francisco public school system at A.P. Giannini Junior High School. I started off playing on the flute, curiously, and I played that for about 6 months until one day the band director said he really needed an oboe player. And a few of us sort of sheepishly raised our hands, and he handed me the oboe. Well, it stuck. I thought it was pretty fun, and I've been playing it ever since. So I've been a member of the Boston Symphony Orchestra for 25 years already, a little hard to believe, and I am the orchestra's designated English horn player, the deeper toned cousin of the oboe. So I have quite a unique role in the orchestra. All English horn players have a unique role because, as you'll hear, it's a rather soft-toned instrument with a beautiful kind of round tone. And so it's sometimes a little bit tricky for composers to orchestrate the sound so that the English horn is heard. Orchestration is just a fancy word for how many instruments are playing at one time. So I often play long solos, sometimes, quite frankly, entirely by myself within the orchestra. But then I have another role too, which is that I sometimes am a blended instrument and I double other parts of the orchestra to make new orchestral colors. So I'm often found playing in a rather heroic manner with the horn section, the brass horn, and other times I might use that mellow sound to make a blended orchestral color with the strings, for example, the viola section or the cello section. I'm almost like a chameleon, if you will. So at one moment I'm playing a famous solo, the next moment I'm just a blended instrument. So I get to be both an individual in the orchestra and a team player. And I really enjoy both aspects of my job. It keeps my life interesting in music. So let me take a moment to talk about the care and the maintenance of the oboe. So this oboe is made out of a black hardwood. Many of them, particularly ones that you might be starting out on, are made of dark black plastic. That's okay. Sometimes plastic instruments work very well. It comes in 3 parts: what we call the top joint, the middle joint, and the bell. And I like to describe its shape as an upside-down ice cream cone. Here's the ice cream cone. There's the scoop. And that's important because the shape of the oboe, which is conical, as opposed to the clarinet, which is cylindrical, gives it its interesting sound. Now, so I'm going to take it apart and put it back together. And then I'm going to show you how to put it together and take it apart. So I start with the bell and the middle joint. Now, it's important that you not line up the B-flat key with its corresponding metal piece on the middle joint. It's important that they be offset, and I usually twist a little bit to put the bell onto the middle joint and then turn it into place. Now, the top joint and the middle joint are a little complicated because it's very easy to bind the keys together if you're not putting it together correctly. So we have these keys that are called bridge keys, and they have to line up. But we don't want them to line up initially because you can bind the keys together. So here too, maybe the camera can see this, I'm going to start by putting the bridge keys a little bit offset, and I twist slightly, very slightly down into place, and then I turn it into position. So they're now precisely aligned. As an oboe player, we often carry quite a few tools with us. Those are for making the reed, which I'll talk about in a moment. But as a very basic aspect of instrument care, you certainly should have some cork grease. Now, cork grease usually comes with most oboes when they're rented, but it's very important that you have it so that you can make the cork fit together. So now if I take it apart, I'll demonstrate. If when you put the cork in to either joint, it's a little stiff, you put just a teeny amount of cork grease on the cork. Not a lot, folks. Don't lather it up. That's a problem. And now you want to just twist that in a little bit, and now it's super easy to put together. It's important that you have some way to dry the inside of the oboe. So it's important that you swab the oboe. If you think there's something wrong with your instrument, don't fix it yourself. Don't try to fix it yourself. Ask for help, presumably, especially from your band director, who will know something about problems with instruments, no doubt from experience. Now, but even using the swab correctly is a little bit of a challenge, so I'm going to demonstrate that. I have a silk swab here. It's very important that it have a metal end and that it have a tail. This is kind of a recent invention, okay? The tail is critical because you might get it stuck in the top joint. And if it gets stuck, you can pull it back out, okay? So now I'm going to demonstrate that I have no kinks in my swab, and I'm going to swab the oboe all the way through. Okay? But because it is absolutely imperative that it never ever gets stuck, I don't take any chances. And I have chosen for years now to only swab halfway. I swab halfway, and then I grab that tail and I pull it back. So now there's no chance of it getting stuck. Because think about it, folks, if it gets stuck, you can't play. Now, we do have to talk, of course, about perhaps the most important thing in a way with the oboe, which is the reed. So, this is the distinctive thing about the oboe, the reed, and it is the object that oboists spend the most time on. Preparing our reeds is still done by hand, as it was literally 250, 300 years ago, even before the time of Bach. It's a double reed, and it's got one piece of cane that is bound to a metal tube and then clipped open to make two pieces of cane, hence the double reed. Now, if you're interested in the oboe, the good news is you can buy good reeds from the store. Sooner or later, if you find yourself more and more interested in reed making in the oboe, you might try learning how to make them yourselves. Regarding how you hold your instrument, it's very important that you walk around with the instrument in your right hand, whether you're right-handed or left-handed. Right hand. Or you can hold it in your left hand, but you have to have your thumb underneath the thumb rest. The reason for that, the reason I carry it this way and not this way, this way, not this way. The reason is this. If you put a little bit too much cork grease on that top joint, what's going to happen? This starts to work its way south a little bit. All of a sudden, you're not even aware of it, and boom, it hits the ground. When you practice in small increments, maybe 30 minutes at a time, maybe 3 times a day. You should also save some time to work on the reed, because the reed is going to take some adjustment, which you're going to learn how to do pretty quickly. Now let me talk a little bit about how to practice. The first thing I want to talk about is your posture. So the best way for you to sit to play is to sit tall like this, because then you have the easiest access to your breath, because you have maximized your very own lung capacity by sitting tall. You can now breathe comfortably. When you first start playing the oboe, you might discover that you feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. Well, the reason is that your body has now metabolized the oxygen in your lungs and turned it into carbon dioxide, which, as you may know, is toxic. So your goal is to get rid of that air. So when you practice, if you start to feel uncomfortable, you have to actually do something that's not very intuitive, and that is exhale. That's an important thing to know about the oboe, because it can be frustrating if you don't know that fact. Now, making a good sound on the oboe is also quite tricky. So here's just a tip for that. First of all, try not to take too much reed in your mouth. Try to play as close to the tip of the reed as possible. Don't swallow the reed, because if I swallow the reed, I'm a bagpipe. Here's a scale with holding the reed correctly. Watch what happens if I put even just a little too much reed in my mouth. That's pretty horrible, isn't it? Isn't that horrible? But like magic, if I play just at the tip and I hold the reed lightly, it's much more pleasant and much more in tune. So, first tip, take a good breath, and if you feel uncomfortable, exhale, then inhale. Second tip, don't take too much reed in your mouth. Don't gobble the reed. Just the little tip against your lips. Third tip, how to form the embouchure. Embouchure. It's a French word which means the formation of the lips. Here's a simple tip for you, a simple trick. Point the corners of your lips in this way and pull your chin downwards. So you kind of pucker like you've just bit a lemon or something. You're going to pucker this way and this way. That helps make the shape of your mouth an O sound. So that you find O, you find that space inside your own head to make the sound rounder. Once you've learned how to breathe correctly, sit correctly, hold the reed correctly, you're ready to go at trying to make a good sound while you practice scales and learn fingerings. To prepare for a rehearsal in the Boston Symphony is no different than the way I would get ready if I was rehearsing in my band or orchestra in middle school or high school. I would try my best to learn the music ahead of time. Usually you can get the music ahead of time, and sometimes the amazing thing is, if you take just a few moments to look at it, you learn a lot and can solve a lot of problems. So even if you think you only have 10 minutes, looking at your music for 10 minutes is way better than not looking at it at all. When you're looking at your music for the first time to get ready for rehearsal in your ensemble or your lesson, pay attention to the key signature. Pay attention to the time signature. Start there, and then, of course, try to figure out the tempo. So what's important there is that when you practice, if you start to feel very frustrated, you take a break and go do something else, and then come back and try again. A practical thing to tell you about coming to rehearsal is a very simple thing, and that is to bring a pencil and an eraser. Now, of course, these days we're all becoming more and more digital, and I imagine by the time my career finishes in a few years, maybe we won't even be using paper anymore. But for now, until we're all using iPads, we're still using a pencil and an eraser. And the pencil is important for you to be able to write down specific instructions that your conductor has given you about what you should be doing. Or maybe notes in your music, sometimes from other players' music, so that you understand everything that's going on around you and can fit your part into the puzzle piece of the music. Also, it's important to have a pencil because sometimes there are mistakes in the music. And that's quite a fun moment when you find a mistake and then you can correct it in your music. You see, the fantastic thing about orchestra life or band life or playing music with other people is that you learn a huge range of skills that are really good life skills. And one of them, of course, the primary one, is teamwork. How do you get along with other people? How do you work with other people? All these musical skills are life skills. Now, I have trained many oboe players at both the high school level and the college level. And I can tell you that most of them are still playing, some of them are in the profession, some are not, but they still like the oboe. And here's the interesting thing. I think without exception, they're all successful, competent people in life. Music has helped them develop, and music has been part of that journey. It's part of what has taught them, in a way, to be that person. This piece is actually really originally for the flute, and it's by the great Baroque composer Telemann. It's just a movement from his fantasy pieces for solo flute, this one in the key of C major. It's short. So that is the oboe, and now I'm going to quickly demonstrate its cousin instrument, the deeper toned, lower toned English horn. In the same family as the oboe, I'm going to play the English horn. Now, the English horn is, in fact, the main instrument that I play in the Boston Symphony, not to be confused with the French horn. It has a mellow tone, as I said, and often plays rather sorrowful melodies in its role in the orchestra. So today, I'm going to just play a short, very short tune, but maybe one that's familiar to you. This is from Concerto de Aranjuez by Joaquin Rodrigo for guitar. I'll play two passages.